Hello Internet, and welcome to my first video in like 7 months. We're going to discuss the first whispers of 0.I being mentioned on the internet. Oh, I've already forgotten how to talk. Please forgive any audio quality issues. It's been really long. There was a staggering amount of dust on my microphone. But yeah, I wanted to make a video discussing the beginning of the 0.I stable cycle. Basically, the way this worked is that I woke up, I don't know, 3 or 4 days ago and found this Discord channel, which is for 0.I stable blockers. And if you don't know what that means, it's basically, they do this every time. It's just a Discord channel where people can mention like really glaring issues with the version of the game that need to be updated before they would do the stable release. And let's just, this is a very relaxed video, by the way, just gonna go like let's play style, live commentary, etc. But let's have a look at what people are discussing here, and then we'll talk about the project as a whole and etc. In fact, let's just look at the blocker tracking. Well, no, let's talk about the project first. So a few days ago, Rennick opened this project, which is basically just a way to track things on GitHub. And we're, I guess, just going to read this because I know a lot of you don't track the GitHub or look at the Discord developer, Discord. So we're just going to do this here. So the candidate branch for 0.I is aptly named the 0.I branch. This is forked from experimental blah, blah, blah. It's not a stable release yet. This is just the kind of work in progress version that they're making as they go. No freezes. So if you have been around for a while, you may remember 2-3 years ago, they would do things by freezing the entire project and working solely on the stable release. Pretty much nothing would get added to experimental during that time, and generally people just did not enjoy that process. I certainly didn't. However, for 0.H, they did things differently. Instead of freezing everything and stopping development, they actually just had two separate versions of the game that were being worked on independently. Now, what this led to was a prolonged process, so it took a lot longer for them to actually release the stable. In fact, I just completely can't remember. I feel like I'm disconnected from the project from not being around, but I feel like it was the longest stable cycle we had in 5, 6, 7 years. So this time around, there's not going to be a freeze. It says in some ways it should remain business as usual in experimental, but I'd like to encourage mergers to slow down on merging major features and content to experimental while we figure this out, in order to keep backporting from being too much work. And what that means is that if someone adds things to experimental that fix issues in stable, then they have to backport those changes, or maybe instead someone adds something that's like quality of life, but it's not like super critical. They still might want to backport that, which adds extra time to that stable release. Now, contributors likewise might want to spend a little more time polishing and completing their major feature PRs rather than pushing them to merge right away. This is a recommendation, not a rule. So again, it's not a freeze. They just would prefer people to, avoid adding incredibly huge features and maybe turn their attention to instead working on this stable release. So how can we help? Well, contributors can help best by focusing on bug fixes and completing unfinished content in the stable branch rather than setting out to, create your next favorite project. We're all contributors on the dev team too, and I totally understand that you might want to keep working on whatever it is that strikes your passion. Yeah, that's how most of us do things in this game. We just pick a project that we want and we run with it, and we don't really care about going back and fixing old bugs or addressing old issues, things like that. Now, that's okay. The whole point of this structure is to allow people to continue doing what they do. However, we would love it if you would find a little extra time to help patch and polish the stable branch. Players are strongly encouraged to play the stable candidate instead of experimental. Again, people often say like, well, I can't contribute, so what does it matter? But realistically, the more people who play 0.I, the more aware we are of the bugs and issues with that version. So just bug reports or talking about issues that you find, those things are very helpful. I know people as players who don't contribute feel a little discouraged, like they can't do anything. Once we're publishing pushing regular releases of it. I'll link them in this post. We should also try to get them linked in the popular launchers. The biggest loss that this new structure has for us is that a lot of people are likely going to keep playing experimental, which means we won't get playtest reports on what needs fixing in the stable candidate as much, and more focus will, as always, be put into whatever new features are going into iExperimental. Now, of course, as above, the whole point of this structure is so that you can do whatever you want. Obviously, you can keep playing experimental if that's what you want, but if you want to help out and you can't contribute, running a few games in the stable candidate and reporting on bugs will be indispensably helpful. And again, that's exactly correct. Translators and tileset artists are even more strongly encouraged to work only on the stable branch. It's not going to be changing as fast and therefore should be easier to catch up on, if you do sprite work or whatever, which will lead to a much more complete stable release. We're still working out the details of how translation will work. Expect updates shortly, and that's an area, I'll be honest, I have absolutely no idea how people translate this game, so I can't speak to what's important there personally. I guess you could ask Rennick or one of the other developers. I assume if you're like one of the big translators, you probably already know what you should be doing. Now, the stable backport process for contributors, fixes for 0.I blockers should be targeted at the branch. If your changes resolve the issue on both stable candidate, is this for everyone or is this just for us nerds that are going to contribute? New features should not be backported. New content, same thing. You really shouldn't be backporting any kind of major content. Changes to features should be implemented if they fix a problem. Yeah, this is not for the majority of you, I guess. Bug fixes are good. Optimizations, not super important unless they make a significant difference, because you don't want to merge something and try to backport something that's just going to make more issues down the line. So it really has to be something that is like pretty clear improvement that doesn't add a bunch of issues. Fixes and adjustments should be, careful audits. You don't want to screw anything up. Tons of new strings, things like that. Routine translation, tile set updates. Yeah, so that's not going to apply to the majority of you. But the point is that this process has begun. And I know your main question, hey, when are we going to get 0.I? And my answer would be, I have absolutely no idea and no one does. So it's okay to not ask that question at the moment. You should really just be aware that this is going to be probably like a 6 to 12 month period of time before that release takes place, unless there is some kind of incredible effort from a particular group of people. The reality is that we currently only have 2 or 3 active mergers. I think Irk is back. I've seen Irk quite a bit on the dev Discord in the last few days. I don't know if that's because he's free from his job requirements at the moment, or if he just popped in to kind of talk about the stable. I don't know. But realistically, we only have a few people who can actually make changes to the project on GitHub. Basically, when you submit a change, it has to be approved by a very specific person who has the power to add that to the game. And those people, for a long time, it was just mail clips. Over the last probably 2 years has done the vast majority of the merges. And so the amount of time it will require people to review these things, make these changes, make sure they all work together, and the fact that a lot of bug fixes and problems can only be addressed by contributors who really know what they're doing, means this will be a probably very long process. And remember too, I'm kind of an idiot, so if anything I say here is wrong, feel free to correct me. I know some of you devs and contributors watch this content, or used to before I abandoned the platform here. And so let's have a look at the issue tracker that has been put up so far for 0.I. By the way, I will link to the guide that we just read and this issue tracker in the video's description down below. But let's have a look. So basically, again, the way this works, a blocker is something that significantly hinders the release and is basically something that would need to be addressed right away, right? If you are going to a convenience store and every time in the game that you go to a supermarket, you suddenly get a seg fault that crashes you to desktop every single time, that's a huge problem and that needs to be addressed. Other things, like maybe you notice the weight of a particular item is wrong. Obviously, that's not a big deal. We don't really care. That's not a huge, that can get done in the next experimental, no problem. Same for most content, most things that people add. It doesn't actually matter to have them in the old version of, or rather the stable version of the game, unless it addresses some kind of big issue. So let's look in progress. We have, looks like someone is addressing the fact that there's some missing propane dialogue, which I assume is pretty relevant. I'm not familiar with that. Confirmed blockers. So these would be things that the dev team has decided, like, hey, these things need to be addressed before we move on with the stable release. So we have things like try-point error. So that's a coding issue that's not relevant to, like, me. I would not be able to fix that. Unrusting recipe incompletable. Are these actual issues I can take a look at? They are. So hi guys, thanks for your efforts. I can't complete the recipe of this requirement, undefined water boiling heat as seen in the picture. So it looks like you're trying to fix a fault, but you're actually unable to craft the water boiling heat that you need. It looks like an undefined recipe or item, but that just that I would think would be relatively easy to fix. So, but obviously having something like the faults on your guns not being repairable, that's not something we would want in a stable release. What else do we have? Mission description truncated. So I'm assuming when you get a mission, it just cuts off a lot of the text, which also very bad for a stable release. Add more dormant zombies to regular spawning. I wouldn't expect this to be a blocker. That seems like content to me. That's just a draft, so there's nothing we can look at there. Software crafting for mods, no idea. Active world mods list outside the save is blank. That sounds pretty bad. Range skills should affect offense summary in custom character. So I'm assuming, yeah, where we get the line at the top, it's not affected by ranged weapons. That does seem bad for a stable release as well. And so, yeah, I don't have a ton to say about this. Mostly the video is just to alert people like, hey, this process has begun. We're not going to do like a thorough audit of what the huge issues are in the game at the moment. But if you do, alarm's going off. My ever so essential 11 a.m. alarm to make sure that I've been up for 4 hours. So obviously we're not going to review everything. If you do know a bug that is like a major problem for the game, or if you are, again, we would encourage you to play the potential stable release branch. That way we are seeing on that version what is happening, what are the issues. We're going to know that it's not connected to experimental because you're playing on that stable branch release. And if you see bugs that are a big deal, things that you think would frustrate a new player as someone, you know, getting an error, like for example, we just talked about that ranged weapon skill not affecting your offense summary and character creation. A new player would not understand that, and that would be like kind of a big deal for someone. And so I'm always concerned with new player behavior. I know that not everyone is. I know that that's something that's not like a huge priority. The game is very like learning curve heavy, but if you know something that's like a big problem like this, or here we have one that just says broken auto pulping, obviously we want our systems to function correctly in a stable release. If you know something that's a big deal, I would encourage you to probably talk about it in the Discord channel. I don't actually know what the proper procedure is. If I personally had an issue that I thought was qualifying, I would talk to the contributors in the dev team, and then depending on what they would say, I would create that issue and try to get it in the project here. But I guess really, yeah, just play the stable branch potential release. That's what we would encourage, so we can get more bug report. I'm rambling, right? Everyone, thank you for watching. We're just gonna cut it abruptly because that seems professional. Everyone, this was my first video in about 7 months. Very strange to me to be recording again. I kind of don't know that I slipped back into it very well. I would love to tell you that more content is coming in the future, and that is definitely a possibility. Some life changes have made things more, I have a lot more free time now than I did, but I'm not really sure what's going to happen with all of that. So I know that, you know, even though the video was supposed to be about 0.I, I'm going to get a million comments telling me, oh, you're back. Oh, welcome back. How are you doing? All that kind of stuff. That'll be addressed maybe in the future. But for now, we have this video, and I hope that that is good enough and I wasn't too rambly. So everyone, thank you for watching. I hope that this has helped you be a little bit more informed. Obviously, we will talk about the 0.I process as it continues, but the reality is it's probably going to be quite a few months of not really any news. It's going to be people working on this stuff in the background and honestly not getting the credit that they deserve for doing all of that work. So yep, I guess that's it. Everyone, thanks for being here, and I will hopefully see you soon in another video.